Hey guys, what is up? SuperKmanrocks here, and I am back for my third quarterfinals overview and analysis. This was the quarterfinals that I personally was most looking forward to, the matchup, at the very least, that I was most looking forward to, and boy, did it not disappoint. We've got a lot to talk about in today's video, so if you guys are excited, of course, let me know down in the comments section below. Who did you expect to win this series? Did it go according to plan, or were you surprised by certain things, a lot of things, nothing? Let me know all of that, of course, down in the comment section below. Of course, today we're going to be talking about Gen.G taking on DAMWON Kia in a best-of-5 to see who moves on to the semifinals of Worlds. If you want to see my in-depth overview and preview of the things that might be happening in this series, or at least what I expected to happen in this series, you can go ahead and check out the video that's up in the iCard right now. That's going to give you an in-depth breakdown of not only this matchup, but all matchups in the quarterfinals, and also a full bracket prediction for what I expect to be going forward on the knockout stage in this tournament. But kind of to summarize it just a tad bit, I do have Gen.G favored here, although I think these very well could be two of the top 3 to 4 teams in the world right now. So definitely something interesting, a very, very, very fun matchup. Of course, if you want to check out my other quarterfinals overviews, you can check out those videos on my channel as well. I have done JD Gaming and Rogue, and I also have done T1 and RNG, and so if you want to check those out, you can as well. But let's go ahead and jump right into our overview and our analysis of Gen.G taking on DAMWON Kia. If you are new here, how we do things on this channel is we go game by game, talking about the drafts, the gameplay, the execution, and where teams can improve in the next games. And basically just kind of detail how the series is going. Momentum's going to be a big factor for me. I'm going to talk about where players' heads may be at, all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to be detailing where I think both teams are standing. So strap in. We're going to have a fun one here today. And we're going to be kicking it off with game number 1. And game number 1 was a Gen.G win. They start off the series 1-0, a huge start in series like this. You always want to be able to get the jump. It's very difficult to be put in a position where you have to win 3 of 4 against a really, really good team like Gen.G. I mean, it would be the same thing on the other side. If DAMWON were to take a game, it's really tough to win 3 of 4 against DAMWON anyways, and so to take the game number 1 win is going to be huge for Gen.G. Draft for both sides is definitely interesting. I think both sides relatively get what they want, except DAMWON leaves up the Yuumi, and that's going to be a big point of contention, I think, for a lot of people. Obviously, Yuumi's still undefeated at Worlds here, and that has stuck around so far in this game as Gen.G gets it on blue side 1, and they are able to win the game with it. However, they're not actually pairing it with the traditional Sivir that we've been seeing it run pretty much the entirety of the tournament with. It was actually the Misfortune here. Surprisingly, I think you're going to hear me be super positive about this. I like Misfortune as a pick. I understand that she had a really low win rate. I think she had a 0% win rate at Worlds going into this series, but this duo really works. This is one of the few Yuumi lanes that I think really takes advantage of almost everything Yuumi has to offer, especially with her new kit, because I do think she has a little bit more lane prowess than she did before. This was always a pick that was more scaling oriented on the side of the Yuumi, so something like Misfortune could handle some of the early lane aggression, handle some of the early bumps in the road against these more tough lane opponents like something like Lucian Nami, and Yuumi could really set up for a lot of the CC that MF could follow up with in the back half of the game. Now, with Yuumi having significantly more mid-game pressure, I would say just generally speaking with the damage increases and the ult cooldown buff, I should say, I just think generally speaking this lane is incredibly strong, and we really saw that in this game. Yuumi ultimate can set up basically perfectly for Misfortune ult. We always talk about the curse of the sad bullet time with MF and Mumu, but Yuumi sets that up basically just as well. If you can hit 1 or 2 people with the Yuumi ultimate, that perfectly sets up an MF ult to follow, and that's basically a guaranteed kill on whoever you hit, and we saw multiple times in that game that really, really mattered. Definitely a great way to disengage. Also, just a great way to engage the fight, because you have things like Renekton and Maokai on this team to be able to dive in with the Yuumi on their back. So if you've got something like Renekton that wants to hit a flank, maybe with Yuumi on the back, you can have the ultimate coming in. That stuns up everybody. You have MF on the other side blasting off an ultimate, and then you've got a big Renekton. You've got Ryze dealing damage. You've got a ton of ways to actually take advantage of this 5v5 team fight, either just generally from front to back or from more advantageous flank-oriented scenarios. So I do like Gen.G's draft. I think it gives you a lot of options. It also potentially gives you a 1-3-1 opportunity. Not something that I would talk about typically in this meta, but in this game, it actually ended up mattering. This is kind of a 1-3-1 comp, and it does execute it well. Renekton and Ryze are pretty good for that regard, but for DAMWON, on the other side, definitely some interesting picks. They go for the Lucian Nami as the counter pick to the Yuumi. They clearly think that this lane is strong enough to be able to bully it early to take advantage of Yuumi's, like, weak, quote-unquote, 1-7, 1-8 that she kind of has, and unfortunately for them in this game, I think it just doesn't work out. I think theoretically it can work, especially if the Lucian and Nami are better players, but with a lot of focus being on the top side of the map, Lucian and Nami were often left isolated in that bottom 2v2, and the MF is a real problem for Lucian in the early game. It's really something that he doesn't deal with all that well unless he's super far ahead, and so Ruler was actually able to get a significant CS lead on Dectum in this game, and that really caused a lot of problems, not to mention the fact that they were losing pretty much everywhere else on the map. I want to give a big shout out to Canyon. Started off this game incredibly well. First of all, he pulls out the Kayn at Worlds, the first Kayn that we've seen at Worlds. This is a very risky pick. I'll talk about it a bit here. I like the pick in concept, and I think in execution it really does work. Canyon takes advantage of Kayn's strengths, which is the fact that Kayn can really disrupt the enemy jungler, and it does encourage a lot of these early game skirmishes that oftentimes a team like Gen.G doesn't really want to go for. While they are incredibly dominant, they're not really this 1 to 5 minute super scrap heavy team. They want to be able to generate their own leads in their lane and then come together for these 3v3s. They're, are kind of scattered around the map. So DAMWON kind of forcing their pressure in the early game, especially like the 1 to 2 minute mark, was absolutely huge for them. Canyon got a huge lead on Peanut in the jungle that basically set Peanut super far behind. Peanut did a really good job answering with some fantastic ganks towards the mid game that actually completely saved Gen.G's game basically by themselves, but you gotta give Canyon credit for being able to generate that lead on Kayn. He was able to get Form Transform into Red Kayn incredibly early in this game. I saw a lot of people online saying that he should have gone Blue Kayn because he was so far ahead. That is just not a good take at all. I really don't know what else to say to that. Blue Kayn is just not viable in Pro in the same way that, I don't know, Kha'Zix is not viable in Pro right now. You just don't have the luxury of being able to go in as an assassin, assassinate maybe one person, and then die, and have that be a worthwhile trade. You really need a lot more if you need to do that. Things like the Akali, the LeBlanc even offer just a tad bit more because of the security that they have, but someone like Blue Kayn just doesn't have that, so Red Kayn obviously the choice here, especially against a relatively low damage comp, at least towards the back half of the game. Ryze can hurt, but really only if he's super fed. Spoiler alert, he got super fed in this game. And it's the same thing for MF. She's going to do a lot of damage with the ultimate, but outside of that, she's really not this hyper carry level of damage from the bot lane position, and so Red Kayn, Gragas, especially full tank Gragas, which is what Nuguri builds. Really interesting takes here, and I really like it. Unfortunately, even though they are able to generate some leads on that side of the map, Peanut does a really good job of being able to bring stuff back. They're able to win a 3v3 around mid lane at, I think, around 10 minutes or so. That gets Chovy a triple kill. And from that point onwards, this Ryze really starts to take over the game. It's really fun to see Ryze back in the meta. I think this is a champion that I don't expect to be very common at this World Championships, but when you see a master of the champion like Chovy be able to pilot him at this level, he looks completely busted. This is a champion that, for all intents and purposes, is super weak right now, but the utility that his kit offers is always going to be relatively good, and if you can pilot him in a really safe way, that you can really take over games, because the bounce effect in those team fights really hurts. The Realm Warp is always useful. It doesn't matter how much damage Ryze is doing in that regard, and he still has this big split push ideology that he can enact if the game goes badly. Chovy took a ton of turrets this game after a ton was invested in him, and he really paid it off in those team fights. So Chovy's going to be my player of the game on this Ryze. I want to give an honorable mention to Ruler on this MF, obviously Lahen's on the Yuumi, and also Peanut on the Maokai. There are a lot of people saying that Peanut got completely out-jungled in this game, and the sad truth of it is, it's kind of true. He got out-jungled this game, but I tweeted this out. This was basically a masterclass from both Canyon and Peanut in two different paths of jungling. It was a masterclass from Canyon in showing how you're able to generate a lead, strangle out your jungle opponent from being able to take camps, and then just snowball the game out from there. Unlucky that he didn't have a lot of good team members. But it was also a masterclass from Peanut to show, okay, so you're down in the early game. You're not getting camps. The enemy junglers counter-jungling you. How do you keep your team in the game? And Peanut, I think, did an excellent job of doing that for Gen.G in this game. So I generally think Gen.G actually played the game very, very well. DAMWON, on the other hand, a lot of mistakes in my opinion. Canyon played really well, but Showmaker, Dectum, and Kellen all had moments that were just not good at all in this one. Showmaker in particular had a lot of missteps. He had some good plays here or there. I think the flash in the bot lane trade, where I think Gen.G really took control of the game. If he doesn't flash E right on top of, I want to say, the Ryze or the Renekton or somebody. I remember he flashed Eden. If he doesn't do that, I think the entire team gets aced, and I think the game from that point is literally unwinnable for DAMWON, but at the same time, he legitimately walks into MF bullet time towards a pivotal fight around Dragon later in the game, and so not a great game from Showmaker. He definitely needs to step up. Obviously, if DAMWON wants to be one of the best teams in the world, we have to get Showmaker. We have to get the former world champion, the former best player in the LCK. And this bot lane also has to step up. They're playing arguably the best bot lane in the world in Ruler and Lahen's. Not an easy task, but I've always been saying that Dekdom and Kellen have been an incredibly underrated bot lane over the course of the year. This game didn't exactly live up to that expectation. Dekdom got completely outclassed by Ruler. This was a straight 2v2 for a majority of this game, as pretty much all of the early action was topside, and so Ruler and Lehens really just bodied Dekdom and Kellen on a pick that, quite frankly, shouldn't be bodied. Lucian Nami should be able to enact some kind of pressure in this lane, and he was down 30, 40 CS at 15 minutes, and so pretty bad. Dekdom's gonna get my dud of the game here, but overall, there are things they can improve on. Generally speaking, where do I want to see both of these teams going in the next games? Well, DAMWON, I think, needs to get a little bit more early pressure going. Now, if that means investing more into the bot lane, I think that means investing more into the bot lane. Dekdom and Kellen aren't exactly the worst players in the world, but they are probably players that need to be babysat a tad bit more. I think investing a ton into your top side, especially full tank Gragas, isn't really something I'm all that worried about. If he dies, he dies. He's still going to be useful late game. And Showmaker's on Lissandra here. He's not someone that's going to be able to carry. So making sure that Lucian is able to generate a lead, I think, would be better. Maybe draft something a little bit safer for Canyon. I love the Kanan. I think it worked out in this game, but generally, it kind of just got outclassed in a lot of the late game team fights. And so just not something that I would go to again unless you feel really confident at being able to snowball through the jungle pick, but that's going to rely on all your lanes winning on their own. For Gen.G, I think you kind of found a formula that works here. This is playing around your macro decisions, playing around your, quite frankly, more secure style of play. DAMWON can be incredibly aggressive in the early game, but they can also be way over-aggressive towards the mid game. If they're not super far ahead, they can very much get punished for that. I think Gen.G playing for those secondary parts of the game, maybe knowing that DAMWON's going to be super over-aggressive in the early game, if you can survive that, hitting those late game power spikes, winning those team fights, that's probably going to be where you're at in this series. I like this draft for them. They're not probably going to be able to get both Maokai and Yuumi again. Those are two super power picks that I don't expect them to have. Chovy also on Rise. Maybe it's repeatable, maybe it's not. This is a champion that's not all that good, so it'll be interesting to see where they go from here, but that's game number one. Obviously, that's the first game, but game number two might be the most important game of the series. I always talk about that. If you go down 0-2, the series becomes much more difficult, because winning 3 in a row against one of the best teams in the world like Gen.G, nearly impossible. It can be done, but it just puts you in such a tough situation for you to be able to do that. On the side of DAMWON, this feels like a must-win in game number 2. For Gen.G, you just want to be able to maintain momentum. You don't want to get blown back and then have the series reset for a best of 3. That would not be where you want to go. So who is going to maintain momentum and who's going to move in to the rest of the series with an advantage? Is it going to be Gen.G or is it going to be DAMWON? Well, the winner of game number 2 was Gen.G. They are able to take game number 2, and that means go up in this series 2-0. This one not nearly as clean as game number 1. Big back and forth effort from both teams here, but Gen.G ends up coming out on top. Now, I'm going to address this at the beginning of this, and I'm probably not going to talk, well, knowing me, I'll probably talk about it the entire segment, but I really want to talk about it mostly at the beginning here. Now, I get it. I'm with you all. Leaving Yuumi up on blue side and then not picking it is horrendous. And giving Yuumi to Gen.G again is a bad decision. But, and this is where I get the flame in the comments, you cannot say that DAMWON lost this game because of Yuumi. And you cannot say that they lost this game because of draft. Is this a bad draft? Yes, I don't like this draft really at all. Wukong has been really taken down in terms of power levels. Dekdom and Kellen have already shown that they don't win the Lucian Nami lane into MF Yuumi, counting on all that. Not all great, but I like the Azir grab. I think that's really good for Showmaker. It gives him an opportunity to be a huge playmaker in these games, and he flexed that. Nuguri had a pretty good game in game number 1 on the Gragas. They just weren't able to do anything around him, and so you go back to that. This draft, is it great? No. Is it awful? No. Can it win the game? Absolutely. And you know what? DAMWON should have won this game. They just should have, and the reason that they didn't is because they misplayed. I don't really want to hear a lot of comments about, oh, they lost this game in draft, because is their draft worse? Yes. But should they have won this game? Yes. And those are two very valid things that I think both can exist here. So let's, just with that out of the way, let's talk about the game now. I do like Gen.G's draft, obviously. If Yuumi's going to be left up, grab that MF Yuumi, going right back into that lane. I understand DAMWON not wanting to give Lucian Nami over to Ruler and Lehens. That's something they have, quite frankly, obliterated people on all year long. And so to not give that over to them, I think is generally a good idea. But leaving the Yuumi up as a way to dissuade them from doing so doesn't necessarily seem like the right idea. On top of that, leaving Sejuani open for them to be able to take on that first rotation as well. And then pairing that with Camille Yone, two of the strongest solo laners in the game right now, just in terms of pure pressure. You're just inviting them to be able to create aggression that you're not going to be able to answer. But credit to DAMWON, because they actually did a really good job in the early to mid game being able to match that pressure. Yes, Chovy was getting a ton of gold, and Doran was actually doing a really good job on the Camille, but there were multiple times in the early game where both Peanut and Doran were caught out, and DAMWON were able to generate their lead off of that, even with bot lane losing. You give a lot of credit to Showmaker. He had a really, really good game here. Some ultimates, some Shreem and shuffles. Absolutely phenomenal. Even towards the back half of this game when they started to lose fights, he was outputting some of the highest damage in the game, so you gotta give credit to Showmaker. He really stepped up after a really bad game number 1, but at the end of the day, Gen.G simply played the late game better. There's no other way to put it. Peanut did a phenomenal job of being able to recuperate, being able to generate dragons, and then getting a clutch Baron steal that I am going to talk about a bit here because it's a very interesting play overall towards the game. A lot of people are going to credit Peanut, and a lot of people are going to yell at Canyon, and I understand that, but really the credit for a lot of this has to go to Ruler on the MF. He does a great job here, obviously, get right outside the pit, ultimating into, bullet timing into the pit to clear everyone out. If anyone sits in there besides Canyon, they're dead. So everyone has to sprinkle out. It becomes a true 50-50 with Peanut and Canyon. They time the damage absolutely perfectly, and Peanut gets that smite. And it's absolutely huge. If they don't get that, the game is over. DAMWON wins from there, but that gives Gen.G just enough power to fight again, and Chovy really pops off in that final fight on the Yone, really being able to take over on those gap closing abilities. There's not a lot of actual true backline mobility from the side of DAMWON if they use it aggressively, and boy did they mostly use it aggressively in this game. So there really wasn't a lot of ways to peel this Yone after he went in completely, especially because he just starts with E anyway, so it's not like he's ever truly in danger unless you can like perma CC him, which is just not super possible with this comp. So generally speaking, once Gen.G got that Baron, it was back in their hands. But DAMWON from that point in the game had their foot on the gas, and they should have won. A few mistakes cost them. Canyon, I actually think, played this mid to late game very poorly. I really do like Canyon as a player, and we'll talk about him a bit as the series goes on, but he played game 2, in my opinion, very badly. This Wukong pick very much did not work out. He continued to attempt to full dive against a comp that has so much disengage and so many ways to just negate exactly what Wukong's doing. He never decided, okay, maybe I just need to sit there, and I know that Gen.G's gonna full dive into the backline, so maybe I sit here and try and peel for my Azir, who really is carrying a lot of these team fights. He never thought that. He just always went all the way in. Same with Nuguri. There was never any help for Showmaker on the backline, and they lost a lot of these fights for it. Obviously, the miss smite is catastrophic, but I don't blame that on him as much as I give credit to Gen.G for the perfect setup for that. At that point, it is basically a coin flip 50-50, and unfortunately, Canyon just lost that. But it's unfortunate because, again, I just thought he had a really bad game. And you got to talk about Dectum and Kellen again here as the bot lane for Lucian and Nami. You pick this bot lane again into the MF Yuumi. I understand you don't want to give Lucian Nami over to Ruler and Lehens because they've dominated on it, but if you pick it, you have to win. You are win or go home. There is nothing you can do from this point onwards if you cannot win. And Dectum played this game so poorly. I mean, dashing right into everybody's spells, callings that are just tickling the enemy team, missing a lot of bullets anyways. Like, he's just off his game. He doesn't really play this Lucian at a super high level, and it's very, very clear to show when he's playing the best ADC in the world. And so he's always down in CS, and he's not really contributing in these team fights. Again, I understand the sentiment of why you want to take this pick, but at this point, it is more valuable to ban it than it is to pick it, because clearly Dectum is not good enough to be able to play and win on it against anything that Ruler pulls out. So Dectum done of the game again here in game number 2, and another repeat for player of the game, because that's going to go to Chovy again. Another fantastic game from Chovy, this time on the Yone, a super aggressive pick that he's able to take over a lot of these late game team fights in terms of damage and separation with. I almost gave this to Peanut as well, who had a fantastic late game on the Sejuani. This is exactly how you play the Sejuani. Yes, he was bullied a little bit in the early game, but by the time we got to this late game, he was perfectly setting up the Camille and the Yone to be able to deal a bajillion damage in these team fights. And like I said, when Wukong's full engaging, it's really difficult for them to have any way to protect any of their backline. And so Gen.G just basically had full access with a ton of divers here, and that was really, really positive. This Sejuani and 2 melees comp can be very difficult to deal with. Obviously, Ruler also playing well. Peanut, Chovy, Ruler, the big 3 of Gen.G really coming in clutch in game number 2. But game number 2, going the side of Gen.G, they're now up 2-0. It is very difficult now for DAMWON to imagine a world in which they come back. It's not impossible, just very difficult. Very few teams can say they can beat Gen.G 3 games in a row, but DAMWON does have the talent to do it, so what do they need to do? Well, first of all, drop the Wukong. It's not working. Drop these kind of pseudo-engagers, you know, early game focus, something like a Kayn or a Wukong. Like, I get the idea of you being able to generate your own lead and then being useful in the team fights, but go for something that's a little bit more of a middle ground. There are aggressive picks in this meta, and I know Graves is banned, but there are aggressive picks in this meta that can also deal damage in the late game while diving the backline. There are options available to you. Something like the Hecarim comes to mind that Canyon plays super well. Hell, if you want to go for this power farming, carry-oriented late game jungler, go for something like the Karthus. Pull it out. You can make it work. It's Canyon, for Christ's sake. I trust him. Outside of that, get rid of this Lucian Nami. You need to start prioritizing a more dominant bot lane. You yourself banned out the Aphelios this game, but clearly Aphelios is Dectum's best champion. It has been for 2 years. I talked about it all the time on Nongshim last year, and in playoffs, I talked about it a ton this year as well. When Dectum's on Aphelios, this entire team changes its game plan because he actually becomes a major positive for them. I would expect that to be hugely prioritized for them going throughout the series. It basically always has for Dectum when they become a little bit more pushed into a corner. He stops trying to experiment and kind of goes to comfort. And so those are the big changes I expect for DAMWON Kia. For Gen.G, it really feels like everything's working right now. You're probably not going to get the Yuumi again. This is 2 games in a row that you've gotten it. You can't really expect a third, but you've got a ton of bot lane options available. I'm really not all that worried about Gen.G finding a bot lane that's going to be able to win. Whether it's MF and something like a Mumu, if you want to transition to that, or if DAMWON moves off of the Lucian Nami, you can maybe pick that up. That would be great as well. Anything you do on top side is probably going to work right now. Your players are just rolling, so just give them whatever they feel most comfortable on and whatever's left up. But that's going to bring us to game number 3. Can Gen.G win this and, you know, complete the cycle of sweeps that we've had so far in the quarterfinals? Or is DAMWON finally going to make a series interesting and bring us to a game number 4? Well, the winner of game number 3 was DAMWON Kia. They are able to take game number 3 and keep the series alive. The first non-sweep in quarterfinals confirmed here with a game 3 DAMWON win, and this was a little bit of a slaughter. This was a massive win for DAMWON. They come out firing. They make pretty much all of the changes that I wanted them to make. Not only do they take away Sejuani here on blue side because Peanut had a really good game and it really unlocked Chovy and Doran in the previous game, allowed them to play significantly more aggressive in a lot of these team fights, but Canyon is on something that he can be significantly more proactive both in the early game and in the late game on, with the Viego that does have early game pressure, can skirmish a little bit early, but can be really dangerous if it gets out of control. You get Dectum on his one trick, you get him on the Aphelios, you add the Lulu to that comp. Aphelios Lulu, in my opinion, probably the best bot lane in the game right now. I mean, maybe outside of like Caitlyn Lux, but even then, Caitlyn Lux is only good in lane. Aphelios Lulu feels like it's good at every point in the game. And then Showmaker goes for the Swain. Now, Swain's a really intriguing pick. I'm a huge fan of the Swain pick. I had him as my highest win rate at Worlds pick in my crystal balls. That's clearly not going to work out. He lost a ton in play-ins, but this is a pick that I think, when piloted at a high level, can be really difficult to actually deal with. And man, was that shown off here. DAMWON looked phenomenal this game. Not only did Dectum and Kellen absolutely style on Ruler and Lehens on their best bot lane, might I add. The Lucian and Nami for Ruler and Lehens was unbeatable in the LCK over the course of the year. It's been really good at Worlds so far too, but Dectum gets his one trick and he really pops off on that. He looks really good in lane. He does have a bit more help this game than he did before, but still looking good. Canyon does a great job of just straight up out-jungling Peanut. He looks fantastic. And you gotta give player of the game here to Showmaker. There's really no one else to even think about for player of the game. That Swain game was absolutely devastating. I mean, he was solo killing Chovy at multiple points in the game. Not only that, but in these team fights, I mean, he would get Shuriman shuffled right into the enemy team, pop the ultimate, and just kill them all, drain tank through them all. Anyways, that's the power of a pick like Swain. And both Showmaker and DAMWON just in general basically played this comp to perfection. Nuguri in the top lane was unkillable. Sejuani into Maokai generally is Sejuani favored, at least in terms of the pressure early. Maokai can be a little bit more difficult to deal with in the late game, but Sejuani, I think, does a great job of enabling something like Viego. We've seen this throughout the entirety of Worlds so far. Sejuani-Viego is actually a really terrifying duo because she sets him up to get a ton of resets in team fights. So even if you do hit this late game for Gen.G, which I do think slightly favors you because you've got the Maokai, you've got the Azir, you've got ways to deal damage in the late game. Let's say you go even, I would say this comp is generally better late, but for DAMWON, they still have avenues to be able to get back into the game, and if Swain wins early, this all of a sudden blows up, because not only is Azir never going to be able to kill Swain so long as he is ahead, but Sejuani-Viego actually has really good backlane access. It makes it very difficult for even something like a Lucian to play the game, not to mention the fact that you yourself have an Aphelios that's pretty much always going to be protected by a Lulu. You've got plenty of tools to be able to close out this game, and generally speaking, I think DAMWON did a great job. Showmaker was unstoppable. He's player of the game on the Swain. If he gets this pick again, he's going to dominate. I don't think this is something I will say that you can pick up every single game. Swain is a bit counterable. He's very weak if he gets behind, very similar to a few other meta champs in the game right now. And so not something that I think is super blind pickable. That's why I really liked it specifically into the Azir into this matchup, because I think into Azir is actually relatively positive. It's one of the few lanes that I think you can dominate early so long as you have pressure in the mid lane. And then if you are ahead as Swain, he's just very difficult to deal with. Azir doesn't have the kind of burst that you would need to be able to cut through something like a Swain in the late game, and he can just drain tank through all the damage, especially with a Poppy in the jungle and a Maokai topside. It's a very low damage late game. You're really relying on that Azir, and if he gets behind early, it's just kind of doomed. And so really do like the Swain pick, but I doubt they're going to be able to go to it again. For Dectum and Kellen, best game of the series by a considerable margin here on the Aphelios Lulu. I would be surprised if they were able to get this all series long, mostly because if there's one thing I know about DAMWON, it's that you just need to ban Aphelios. Like, there's just no reason to give it to them, because even if you give them the super fed, super strong AD carries that are on the list, right? Like the other super duper good AD carries, he can't play them like he plays Aphelios. He plays Aphelios like it's the best AD carry in the meta. And I still kind of think Aphelios is the best AD carry in the meta. I think he's the most consistent at the very least. And if Dectum is going to play him at the highest level, just take it away. Don't give it to him. Don't give him that opportunity. If you need to leave up the Caitlyn, that's fine. But even when you're on blue side, you were banning out things like the Fiora ahead of it. That's just not really what I want to see here. I'm really not all that worried about things like that. I'm significantly more worried about the Aphelios. So I would really, really expect that Aphelios to be taken off the board, or at least that's what I would do. But Dectum doing a great job of being able to show why he's a one-trick of that champion. Kellen doing a great job of being able to accent that. He's kind of getting back on the bread and butter that he's been playing all year long. A lot of Lulu, a lot of Yuumi, things like that throughout the year. While it's not his preferred playstyle, I actually think it complements his playstyle relatively well. It's not perfect. He's an engaged player at heart, but he does play these enchanters well, and I think it complements Canyon and Showmaker more specifically because he can really be a conduit for them to play through. Canyon did a great job getting resets on this vehicle. Like I said, him and Nuguri formed a really dangerous duo towards the back half of the game, but generally speaking, DAMWON's comp, very, very difficult to break through, especially if they're able to generate that lead. For Gen.G on the other side, I actually do like this comp, generally speaking. Not only do you get the Maokai, but you get Ruler and Lehens on Lucian Nami. This feels like it should just win. Chovy on Azir, Peanut on his best champion in Poppy, even though Poppy has been relatively nerfed and it's not nearly going to have the same kind of early game that something like a Viego would. You're looking at this draft and you're saying, okay, this is totally doable, and then things just start falling apart in the early game. Ruler and the Hen start getting taken apart by Dectum and Kellen, mostly because of some really, really good interference from Canyon, who does a great job counter-jungling this Poppy and making sure that Peanut really doesn't have a lot of avenues to win this game, even though Peanut, I think, plays relatively respectfully here. And then Chovy getting solo killed in the mid lane. It's just really, really not good. There's so many things here that kind of spiral out of control very quickly for Gen.G, and they're just not able to catch up. Chovy's gonna get my dud of the game here. He was really outclassed by Showmaker, even towards the back half of these fights. They were often 4v5s, because you would see him farming in the side lane. Now, I understand that he's kind of the win condition for this team, and he really felt like he needed more resources before he was able to fight, but if DAMWON's gonna force a fight, you simply have to be there for it. This was always the complaint with Chovy, is that he can sometimes be a little bit oblivious to the obvious play that the other team is going to make, and he can sometimes just kind of be lost in his own world. I think he's gotten a lot better at that over the course of the year, definitely, at least early in the game, but this was a little bit of an example of him feeling the pressure, I think, a bit. Maybe feeling like he has to get that gold, has to be that carry this game, and kind of ignoring the fact that it was super obvious that DAMWON just needed to full engage and they could end the game. And so, overall, not a great game for Gen.G. I really don't know what you change here. I think for the most part, you don't change your comp, you more so change DAMWON's comp. I'd be taking away the Aphelios. I'd be making sure that you have a more advantageous matchup into something like a Swain. Doesn't even have to be getting rid of the Azir, but perhaps something in the jungle that can be a little bit more aggressive if they do pull out that Swain early, something that can punish the low range of him in the early game. I do like Doran on tanks in the top lane, and Chovy on Azir and Ruler on Lucian are pretty good. I think generally speaking, it's more about getting rid of comfort for DAMWON than it is about, you know, changing up your game plan entirely on the side of Gen.G. But for DAMWON, on the other hand, just keep this rolling. Comfort is rocking and rolling. Canyon on Viego, Dectum on Aphelios. This is what I want to see. If you can get the Lulu, great. If you can get the Sejuani, great. Swain was a great pick here, but I don't think you're going to be able to get away with that twice, and so perhaps something a little bit more up Showmaker's alley. He plays every mid laner in the book, so I'm really not all that worried about them being able to find something. The best thing I can say about this game is it probably gave them a ton of confidence moving in to the Game 4 that we're about to see here. So who's going to win Game 4? Is DAMWON going to actually be able to make this a very interesting series, tying it up 2-2 and sending us to a Silver Scrapes Game 5? Or is Gen.G going to be able to say, well, Game 3 was just a little bit of a blip on the radar, and Game 4 we bounce back and we take it? Well, The winner of game number 4 was DAMWON Kia. They are able to take game number 4 and push us to a game 5, a potential reverse sweep coming out from the former world champions. A super fun game number 4, not really because of the gameplay, because the gameplay, quite frankly, incredibly boring. The most boring game of the series by a considerable margin. Not really anything going on. But again, let's look at these drafts. I actually don't hate what Gen.G do. I actually think they performed this draft relatively well. I would have gone with a few different adjustments, but you know what? I certainly don't hate what they did. For DAMWON, I also don't hate what they did. I think you could talk about the Renekton pick being kind of useless and him playing a little bit over-aggressive Nuguri that is in the early game, and that's absolutely true, but from that point onwards, Canyon was just able to snowball the map so hard that the game was over. You get Canyon back on this Viego. I think this is a perfect pick for him right now. Not only does it set him up to be able to make plays in the early game, but it sets him up to be able to be super influential in the team fights late. If they really do need that takeover carry presence from the jungle, Viego is probably one of the best picks that he could have in that role right now. And you know what? Dectum gets his Aphelios again, so let's give him a round of applause, shall we? He gets his one trick again in game number 4, and he continues to look fantastic on this pick. I've talked about it over the course of the LCK season. Dectum, as a regular player, is a pretty good AD carry. Probably a top 4 or 5 AD carry in the LCK, somewhere around there. Dectum on Aphelios is like a top 3 ADC in the world. He genuinely plays like that when he is on this champion. He consistently beats some of the best AD carries in the world, players like Ruler, players like Deft, players like Prince. Like, without fail, he's able to do that incredibly consistently in the LCK, and he's clearly brought that to the world stage as well. He just knows how to pilot this champion at a level that most others are not able to compete with. Kellen, on the other hand, goes to his most successful pick over the course of the year, in my opinion, with the Renata. This was something I was always scared of giving to top LCK supports because they always seem to know how to use it in the exact right way, both in lane, which it can be very punishing in, and out of lane, which we talked about plenty of times on this channel, how that ultimate can just be an absolute killer in pretty much any late game team fight. And then you give Showmaker LeBlanc, like, oh, I guess Showmaker can have LeBlanc, probably his most famous champion. Whatever, I guess. It's fine. Overall, really good draft from DAMWON, and they execute on it super well. I'd be a little bit worried about the early game for the most part here. They do have an avenue to be able to maybe attack the top side of Gen.G because of Nuguri, and they're able to do that a tad bit because that Renekton just plays so freaking aggro towards the beginning of this game. But at the end of the day, he's able to generate his lead, and Canyon's able to generate his absolute jungled Canyon. And yes, it is a jungle Canyon in this game, very worthy of the rep. He must have been up 5k gold on Peanut by the end of this game. It was absolutely absurd how much not only he was taking away from Peanut, but how much he was just outclassing him in terms of the macro movements and objective control around the map. This is how you strangle your opponent now. We talked about it with T1 and RNG in the series before. I believe it was game number 1 of that series yesterday. But this is how you completely strangle out an opponent. You set them up in a position where they just have no resources. They have nothing to get on the map, and they have to hope for you to mess up in order for them to even try to play the game. And knowing DAMWON, Canyon's just simply not going to mess up. So yeah, pretty easy choice for player of the game here in game number 4. But again, you gotta give a ton of credit to Dectum and Kellen. You get on this Aphelios, you get on this Renata. They even have to play into what I consider relatively to be a counter pick, which is the Jinx. I think Jinx is actually really good into Aphelios, not only because she matches his scaling, they're both hyper carries that can be super detrimental in late game team fights, but I actually think Jinx has a super favorable lane matchup into Aphelios, which a ton of hyper carries and even some lane bullies don't really have the ability to say. Aphelios has a ridiculous amount of range and sustain depending on what he has available to him at that time, and it makes it very difficult to actually deal with him in the early game. He has a very efficient way to be able to get to the late game, and then once he gets there, especially if he has the right guns, which Dectum just always seems to have, he's just going to be able to obliterate you in a team fight. But Jinx can basically do the same thing with significantly less setup, and I think she does have a very, very strong laning phase that can really harm Aphelios' chances of being able to push and being able to generate pressure. The big difference maker is Ruler takes Jinx on B2, and then Kellen answers with the Renata. I think that's an absolutely genius answer because Renata does really well into Jinx because not only in the early game does Jinx have to be super wary of engages coming out from that Renata because the Lulu is not really going to be able to stop anything that comes out from the Aphelios, but in the late game, if you get hit by Renata ult, like, you have to cleanse that, or else you kill somebody on your team, and that's a disaster. Not even Azir is really in that predicament, but Jinx attacks so fast and does so much efficient damage that you really do have to worry about that Renata coming out. It really allows DAMWON and Kellen to not only play with some aggression in the early game, but they know that Ruler has to pay respects to them in the mid to late game as well, and it really opens up all these new avenues for team fighting for DAMWON, and I think that just really added on to all the domination that they were able to conclusively contribute in this game. Showmaker on LeBlanc looked fantastic on it. He was able to blow up some people in this game, but generally speaking, LeBlanc's not somebody that's going to be able to carry you to wins right now. She doesn't really have that kind of potential. She's just going to be a really nice complementary piece when you have a lot of other facilitators. You've already got a fed Viego. You've already got a fed Helios. You've got a ton of people that are already going in and doing a ton. She's going to be great helping set them up to be able to carry the game a lot easier, obviously. Nuguri on the Renekton, super proactive in the early game, not always for the better, but it definitely ended up working out on their end. That was DAMWON for Gen.G. I've already talked a bit about their comp. It looks good on paper because they do have a lot of picks that I think work for them. Peanut on Sejuani looked really good in game 2. I understand running that back. Chovy on Azir. It's arguably the best mid laner in the game right now, and it's one of Chovy's best picks. Ruler on the Jinx. Lehen's taking away the Lulu. This looks like it would be a good idea on paper. Doran playing his best champion in Gnar. So a lot of things that are really kind of going right for Gen.G. The problem is that not a lot of these synergize together. First of all, you have basically no early game presence on this team at all. Sejuani is going to get out jungled by Viego. Not only because Canyon's just a better early game player than someone like Peanut is, but Viego is just better early game than Sejuani. He's going to have more map pressure, and your Azir, your Jinx, I mean, they might be able to offer a tad bit, but they're not going to be able to offer enough to be able to push that matchup in your favor. Not only that, but Sejuani pick here is a little bit undervalued because Sejuani really needs melee champions or shorter range champions to be able to take advantage of her best, traits, her ability to stun and really cause a lot of havoc to enemies in team fights, and you just don't have that here. Really, the only one she combos with, even remotely okay with, is the Gnar in the top lane. The Azir is not helping, the Jinx is not helping. There's really not a lot of synergy coming from Sejuani to the rest of this comp. Again, it's a strong pick, but I really don't think it worked in the context of this. I'm not saying change around the Azir and the Gnar, I'm maybe saying change around the Sejuani. Maokai was left on the board. I think it basically does what the Sejuani does, but a tad bit more efficiently. Chovy also had a pretty bad game here on the Azir. This is very similar to his game number 3, in which you could definitely tell that he felt the pressure of having to carry this game on his shoulders, and so he very much took that to heart. Not only was Peanut getting completely run over in the jungle, like it wasn't even remotely close, but Doran was losing in the top lane. Ruler didn't have nearly the same kind of pressure that DAMWON had because of the interference of both Canyon and Kellen, that there really wasn't a lot that he could do. So Chovy very much felt like he needed gold and he needed it fast. So he was farming. He was farming and farming and farming, and he missed a bunch of team fights because of it. This is kind of the problem with Chovy. This was always the problem with him in years past. I thought he had sorted this out going into Worlds this year. This was something he really didn't do all that much in the LCK. Over the course of the year, he was very much willing to fight a ton, but I think the pressure of him being the sole carry in this game, especially on something like the Azir, is starting to get to him. Maybe putting him on something that can be a little bit more facilitative. Not that Azir can't be facilitative, but something that he doesn't feel the pressure to win the game basically by himself on would be a little bit more beneficial, because you have Ruler on the Jinx, you have ways to get back into this game, but at the very least, you have to be able to be there and you have to be contributing, which he just wasn't doing. I didn't really talk about it, but Peanut's going to get out of the game. Got run around in circles in this one. This is one of the worst jungle performances we've seen out of Peanut all year long by a considerable margin. I had Peanut as my number 1 jungler coming into this tournament. He has been thoroughly outplayed by Canyon up until this point. Yes, he really hasn't been bad, but Canyon's just been so extravagantly good that it's really making me question, all of the things that I thought about Peanut going into this tournament. Again, I'm not really... I don't want to sit here and harp on Peanut and really crap on him, because first of all, I don't think he's even playing that bad. I think Canyon's more so just playing good, and also, you can have a bad series. Like, I would rather take one bad series and an entire year of good play over the reverse, essentially. And I think that's basically what Peanut's offered. Hopefully he can step it up here in game number 5. It's going to be absolutely crucial that he does, because it's win or go home for both of these teams. But I want to give a big shout out to Canyon. This is what I've been saying all year long. I had a ton of comments, and this feels weird to say right now, especially with how Twitter and everybody is reacting at Worlds, but I implore you, all of you who have either followed the channel for a long time or those who might be new to the channel, go check out some of my LCK weekly reviews and look in the comment section. People were out, and I mean out, on this DAMWON team, and most of them were out on Canyon. And the entire year, I'm sitting there like, guys, Canyon's awesome. He's been very good. He's an all-pro. I got a ton of flack for that in my LCK all-pro predictions and stuff. And I've been saying it all throughout the year, and you know what? I was saying, like, he's going to show up when it matters most. He had a really good playoffs, wasn't able to get it done, but he dominated Live Sandbox in their regional qualifier. He was the best jungler in group stage, in my opinion, and he is thoroughly executing the best jungler in the world going into this tournament, maybe with the exception of Kanavi. But Peanut, Kanavi, you can make a case for both. And I think he deserves that recognition. I think it's crazy to say that Canyon was underrated, but I'm happy to say that I've been along for the ride all year long, through the ups and the downs. I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh yeah, brave of you to say Canyon was good. And that's what I was saying. I was like, why is it brave of me to say that Canyon's good? But it very much felt crazy all year long with all the negativity kind of surrounding this DAMWON team. It's really good to see them kind of fulfilling their potential here at Worlds. But that's going to bring us to our Game 5. And Game 5, obviously the most important one of the series here. It's win or go home. The winner could potentially be sealing themselves into the finals as we look at the opponent that they might be facing in the semifinals. Maybe the weakest of the semifinals, just considering the matchup. But you gotta win this game to even think about getting there, and you're playing one of the best teams in the world. This really is going to be an absolute slugfest between two of the top teams that we've seen in a very long time. But who is going to take it? Is DAMWON going to be able to continue their run and complete the reverse sweep, or is Gen.G going to bounce back and prove that momentum means nothing to them? Their talent will reign supreme. Well, the winner of game number 5 was Gen.G. They are able to win a banger, an absolute banger of a game number 5. I feel really bad having to spoil it to you guys, because generally I would just sit here and tell you, go watch this game. Because seriously, genuinely, I mean this with my heart of hearts. If you, yes, you sitting in the audience right now, have not watched this game, go freaking watch this game. Don't listen to me talk about it. I'm not going to do it justice. My words don't do it justice. Go watch this game. This is one of the top 5 to 10 League of Legends games of all time. Of all time. I mean, the series just start to finish was a complete banger, but this game is what professional League of Legends is about. This game is what Worlds is about, and you can see that on the screen. You can see the green on the screen. You can see that I have a player of the game. But for the first time in my channel's history, genuinely, in my channel's history, there is not a dud of the game. There is not a single player on this Rift that I can, with good conscience, give dud of the game to. There's no one, absolutely no one, who even was like, oh, well, maybe they shouldn't have made that one play. Every single person on this game, on this board, on this graphic, whatever, deserved to win. Every single one. And unfortunately, only 5 of them could, but I just can't bring myself to actually give a dud of the game in what was probably the best game that we're going to see this year by a large margin, and one of the best games of all time. Genuinely watch this. If you have not, sit down. It is an absolute treat. I'm sorry I spoiled it for you, but let's talk about what happened. First and foremost, let's talk about draft. I was actually really worried going into this game, not for one, but for both teams, because as I tweeted out, and obligatory plug here, go follow my Twitter. It's down in the description. I tweet during all of these games, so you can get some more immediate thoughts. I also respond to you guys when you do ask me questions on there, so if you want to interact in a more direct way, that's a really good place to do so. But I tweeted out right after this game started that I didn't like either of these teams' drafts. And you know what? I stick to that. Gen.G basically sticks to exactly what they played in game number 4, which is this big mismatch of not really a lot of cohesive pieces, although very importantly, they switch out the Azir for the Victor. And I really do think that actually does change a lot. Obviously, Azir is going to bring a different mentality, but like I said for Chovy, you don't really want him thinking that he has to be this super big hyper carry towards the back half of the game, because that maybe pushes him into this idea of, well, I gotta farm. Victor, I think, is a lot more playmake oriented. Yes, he can still really carry these late game team fights, and trust me, we'll get to that, but it's not in that same way. Victor very much wants to be around his team. He wants to be useful. He has great disengage. He has great peel in general, and so he's got a lot of tools to be able to help out everybody else here. But outside of that, you're still going Lucianami on Ruler Lens. Hasn't won a game yet in the series, which, you know, very small sample size. Lucianami's a great lane, and it's the best for Ruler and Lehens, but it definitely is a little bit of a risk. You're going back to the Gnar-Sedge combination that didn't really work. Sedge still not having a lot of targets to actively enable, you know, just generally speaking with what Sejuani wants to do, and so you have a lot of problems there. But on the side of DAMWON, you get a lot of what you want, but you don't actually get a lot of what you need, in my opinion. Yes, you get the Aphelios, which I think is what, for me, on Twitter, made me say that this was a DAMWON-led draft, because decked him with Aphelios, completely different. I can't believe that you gave him Aphelios 3 games in a row. How does this not get banned over Caitlyn or over Viego? Like, I understand Viego's a problem, but, like, is he that much of a problem? I think Viego might have been able to be left up, in my opinion. Hell, I would have left Caitlyn up. I genuinely, if you're scared of Viego, leave Caitlyn up. Force decked him to play something like Caitlyn in this Game 5. How many scrims does he have on it? I have no idea. I've never seen him play the champion. I've seen him play Aphelios 1,000 times, though, and he barely loses. This is a big gamble from them. Fortunately, obviously, it pays off, but man, I would not have taken that risk in Champion Select. And then they go for the Kayn Syndra jungle mid. This is wild. This is not what I saw coming. Gotta give Canyon a ton of credit. Not only did he do exactly what he did in Game 1 in the early game, completely taking over Peanut's jungle and making this, early game basically doomed for Gen.G in general, which he did. He was up like 40 CS or something by like 10 of 15 minutes into the game. I mean, it was actually absurd. He completely gapped Peanut in the jungle, but he also kind of got shut down towards the mid-game here when we started getting to a lot of these skirmishes, or should I say non-skirmishes. It really started to slow the pace and slow this Kayn down by a considerable margin, which was huge for Gen.G. In the first game that Canyon played on Kayn here, he got transformed in like 10 minutes into Red Kayn and he was off to the races. In the second game here, game number 5, he transforms just after 20 minutes into the game. Base Kayn sucks. Like, I don't need to be the one to tell you that. Base Kayn is garbage. And so, to have him at like minute 18, minute 19 was disastrous for this team's macro plays. It really allowed Gen.G to establish a strong foothold into this game. But even with Canyon playing out of his mind, he just wasn't able to kind of come back from that. Showmaker on the Syndra, very interesting pick here, obviously. Showmaker very good at this champion, but I would consider Syndra very weak in the meta right now. I think there's a ton of control, bursty-oriented mages that just simply do her job better. I think her into Victor is honestly not great overall for the side of DAMWON. I was really concerned when they picked Renekton and Syndra as their solo lane duo. I thought that really wasn't going to go well, but like I said, I didn't like either of these drafts, and so it was all about execution for me. Like I said, Canyon dominated this early game, really took everything away from Peanut, was dominating it, but Peanut did a really good job being able to rally around that. Chovy was really able to get rolling, and you gotta give Ruler and Lehens credit. They weren't able to win Game 3, they weren't able to win in Game 4, but they were able to win here in Game number 5. They did a really good job in lane of being able to withstand the tide of Aphelios Lulu, kind of go even, but Ruler was doing a ton in these proactive fights around the map, around dragons, etc. He was actually able to generate a lot of gold in this game, which was great. We'll get to him a bit more later, but the mid game was mostly on the side of Gen.G, at least, about Chovy, who was really starting to get completely out of control. We were talking about this big end game for DAMWON versus Gen.G, where it was Aphelios who was given every bit of gold. Yes, Canyon was getting Rift Heralds, and he was dumping it into Dectum, and they were putting him in side lanes and giving him Soul Turret gold. Like, they were pumping into this Aphelios. And then on Gen.G's side, just naturally, Chovy was getting absolutely fed on this Victor. He was sitting ridiculously far up, and you really got to give both of them credit for that because it was a lot of fun to watch, but it very much felt like it would be a two-titan clash towards the back half of this game. That is until DAMWON finds a miracle fight in the mid lane. Now, I'm going to talk about this, but I don't do it justice. If you watch the game, you know what I'm talking about. And if you don't watch the game, go watch the game. What are you doing listening to me talking about it? But a miracle fight in the mid lane where not only do Gen.G kind of start, winning the fight a bit, they chunk out Showmaker and kind of push them down into River, back into their side of the jungle, but you've got Kayn on the flank. They all try to funnel into him to try and, disrupt what he wants to do. He gets a 3-man knockup onto them right into the Scatter the Weak from Showmaker, and it obliterates the entire Gen.G team. That is a play that should be on every single Worlds highlight reel for the rest of time. Some of those plays that are on there, fantastic, but this one right up there with some of the coolest Worlds plays of all time, and it gave DAMWON such a commanding lead in the game. Unfortunately for them, Gen.G was not going to give up that easily. Peanut did a great job of really forcing the issue. They started to stack dragon after dragon, but you get to Soul Point, and okay, you're not able to get, the 5th dragon in the game, whatever. Comes down to Soul Point again, 3 to 2 dragons, and Canyon steals it, an absolutely massive steal from Canyon. You've got this big fight around Dragon Pit. Canyon sneaks off into the back and is able to get into the Dragon Pit through the backside by going over the wall. No one notices him, and by the time they notice, it's too late. He's able to get Dragon. He's not able to get out, I don't believe. I don't remember, but keeps the game alive. If Gen.G gets sold, this game gets entirely more difficult. They even attempt a 50-50 around Baron, but luckily for Gen.G, Peanut is able to secure that one. They then, Gen.G, that is, starts to retreat up into the top lane, and DAMWON are looking. Gen.G are a little bit low, but this is clearly going to be the deciding fight. Whoever wins this is going to win the game. You've got an incredibly strong Aphelios, you've got an incredibly strong Victor, and they go at it. The first thing that happens, a phenomenal Nami bubble coming out from Lehends that forces the Zhonya's on Showmaker. It really takes him out of the beginning part of this fight. Chovy is able to get his Gravity Field and then his Chaos Storm off. He is able to Zhonya's as he gets the Dectum ultimate, the Aphelios blue ultimate coming in. So before he actually takes any of the damage, he gets his Zhonya's off, and he's able to stop that. He comes out of that, he's able to do a really good amount of damage, but the Aphelios gets Lulu ulted, and so he's now taking over the fight. He's blowing up Chovy, he's gone. He's blowing up Peanut, he's gone. But you know who he's not able to blow up? Ruler on this Lucian, who's able to take out both Showmaker and then finally Dectum and Kellen to end this fight and end the game magnificent. I mean, you can't write a better story than this. Ruler wins the pivotal team fight, proving he might be the best player in the entire world, and Gen.G is moving on to the semi-finals. Golly, this game was so much fun. Like, I'm pumped just talking about it. It's crazy. That feeling of electricity, it just courses through you. This is what League of Legends esports is about, but you gotta give it to both of these two. I can't sit here and talk about what they did right, what they did wrong, because both of these teams had good plays, they had mistakes, but at the end of the day, they both played their absolute hearts out, and you gotta give it to them because they both deserve to be here, and this is a series that I think we're going to remember for a very long time. Ruler gets player of the game, but you could give it to Chovy. Hell, you could give it to Canyon. Canyon was likely the best player in this game. Unfortunately for him, it just wasn't going to matter. I feel really bad for DAMWON because this is now the end of their world's journey. They're going to be knocked out in quarterfinals, but what a showing they had. Canyon and Showmaker proving that they are still one of, if not the best jungle mid duo in the entire world, because you're going into what that likely was in Peanut and Chovy, and you're quite frankly just better than them for a majority of the series. Mostly Canyon over Peanut. Chovy was really great. I don't want to take away from Chovy. He was freaking fantastic in this series, but still, it was just unbelievable how well they played. Very disappointing to see them go out here, but we're getting to that point now. Top 8 in the world, still pretty good. This was a team that very well could have won Worlds, and I'm really excited that they got to show everybody on this biggest stage what exactly their potential was. But for Gen.G, they do it. They prove all the doubters wrong. I had a ton of people telling me that DAMWON were going to win this, and I know that, you know, public favor definitely shifted over to DAMWON. I had faith in this Gen.G team. The talent is there. They have learned from their mistakes. They very much have a secure playstyle. And for all this idea that this team isn't clutch, you've got a player like Ruler who, I don't know how you can make the argument that a player like Ruler is not clutch, which is what we saw towards the back half of this game. Chovy was freaking phenomenal in this series. You can't say that Chovy didn't have a fantastic series. You can talk about games 3 and 4 not being perfect for him, but games 1 and 2 were won by Chovy, and game 3 was on the back of Chovy. At a certain point, I want to say 35 minutes into this game or so, he was genuinely up 8,000 gold on the next highest member of DAMWON. I'm serious about that. He was up 8,000 gold. Yes, by that point in the game, did it really matter? But still, I mean, it just goes to show how well Chovy was playing this game, how many resources he was able to accumulate, and how proactive he was being in this one. They would not have won with a good, or a great, they would not have won with a great mid laner. I hate to say that. Even one of the, 10 to 15 best mid laners in the world, they don't win this game. You win this game with Chovy, and you win this game with Ruler. That's what you need to be able to move on, and that's what Gen.G has. I really feel bad for whoever this team has to play against in the semifinals, because I really feel like they're going to be raring and itching to absolutely demolish. But God, what a momentum builder, and what a series that I can't wait to look back on for years to come. Alright, well that is going to do it for my Gen.G versus DAMWON Kia quarterfinals overview and analysis of all 5 games in this best of 5 series. What a banger. I really do hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, let me know down in the comments section below. What did you guys think of this series? Who do you think was player of the series? Who do you think was dud of the series? Were you impressed? Not impressed? I mean, how can you not be impressed? But were you impressed with Gen.G? How do you think they're going to do in the next round? And who do you think they have the better chance against, DRX or ADG? And let me know who you think is going to be winning that series down in the comment section as well. Of course, if you are new here, hit that subscribe button. If you made it all the way through this basically hour-long video, it probably means you like the content I'm putting out, and if you like this video, you're probably gonna like the rest. So I really recommend you hit that subscribe button, hit the bell so you can be notified when these videos go live. I'm gonna be doing reviews and previews for everything that goes on, not only for Worlds throughout the rest of this entire World Saga, but the off-season's coming up too, and I know a lot of people love off-season news and drama just like I do, so be sure to hit that subscribe button if you guys are interested in any of that. Of course, if you did enjoy the video, it really would mean a lot if you hit that like button as well. It does help get this video out to more people. You guys have been absolutely killing it with that lately. But of course, with all that being said, I hope you all are having a great day. I hope you continue to have a great day, and I will see you all later.